Are we ready to get started?
Yes.
Excellent. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henrik Tademan. I'm a professor at Hult International Business School. I also teach at Harvard Extension School, and I run a small consulting company called LeadExtreme. I'm here today with two gentlemen talking about a really, truly exciting journey that they are engaged with. First of all, we have Dr. Angela Bisignano, who is the director of EDHEC International BBA. And we also have Dr. Dennis Coltier, director of custom programs and corporate education at UCLA Extension. We're here to talk about their strategic partnership in building an international BBA program. And I have to say, I got into this program through my daughter, who is actually in the age of looking on cool programs that are taking her on an international level. And I got very excited personally of the work that EDHEC and UCLA has done in collaboration with the University of Singapore in building a program that takes BBA students to all parts of the world. So I'm personally vested and interested to learn more about this program and how the collaboration came about, and of course also how it's helping the two great universities in building something together that is more than the kind of pieces of the puzzle. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to hand it over to the speakers of today, and I'm going to return when we come back to the Q&A session. Thank you very much from my part. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Eric, and good evening or good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to everybody, wherever you are connected today from. As Eric highlighted, I'm Angelo Bisignano. I work for EDHEC Business School, and I'm in charge of this particular boutique program, which is a joint program between EDHEC Business School, UCLA Extension in the United States, and Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. So I will be talking a bit to you about the program, but I will be actually using the program as an example to show how joint programs can be developed at strategic level, and then perhaps giving a few pointers, a few tips on practical activities that you can follow it. And then we would like to keep it dialogically, so moving on into our question and answers, so we can a bit talk. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. Okay, and we're going to have. I hope you can all see. So obviously, we're going to have a BGA capacity building workshop. We'll be talking about strategies for building joint programs with overseas business schools. In this case, Europeans, North Americans, and Asian. Partnerships and joint programs have been in the literature for quite a while, in the literature of higher education. A decade ago, joint programs promised to be the future of transnational education. So this was like the emerald city where we should all aim to. They were going to revolutionize the scenario of higher education. We had some very good examples all over the world, but in general, they seem to have remained marginal in terms of both number of students and income generated for institutions. Even though qualitatively, we can see a lot of very, very good institutions and a lot of very good, well-designed programs all over the world. So this was, when such partnership exists, they're often run as a bilateral agreements between two, perhaps sometimes three schools, and they are normally in the same field of subject, like business, and with a major minor component. And they're normally designed to aim at offering students like a bicultural educational pathway. You'll be studying in the US, but you can go and study in France for a period, or you study in France, you can go and study in Argentina for a period. So to offer students a bit of experience, a bit of flavor of a different educational system. But which ones were, with some colleagues, I worked at Nottingham Business School for a few years. We wonder why joint programs did not take off. We designed a couple of models. We designed double degree programs. And we looked at which ones are some of the reasons. First of all, with practical reasons, promoters often move on. Higher education sees a lot of turnover, and normally such particular programs require a lot of mental energy and a lot of dedication, and they often see the momentum behind an initiator, normally because of research interest between the two organizations, partnerships, friendships, or in the case, as Henrik mentioned, vested particular personal interest. But promoters move on. New people do not necessarily know the background of it, and there is a bit of lack of momentum to take them on. Then there are some practical parts like misaligned requirements and regulations. So this is partnerships works very well, but then you go into the nitty-gritty aspects of looking at what is needed every year for completion, and they tend to be misaligned. It creates frictions and problems. So partnership decide, but schools decide better to move and work on independently. Sometimes also it is a misaligned program management delivery, from simple things such as misaligned calendars to juries, to the board of passage, to requirements for different ministries, or simply because is in some countries the level of the amount of credits that is necessary to be taught in a particular country to receive a degree from that country, it causes some limitations. Assurance of quality processes, has always been an issue. Great associations like AMBA, BGA helped to create like gold standards all over between different schools in order to understand assurance of quality processes, for schools to see that it's important to follow particular procedures, particular processes, to share and to understand how to move forward. There have been a lot of development over the last few years, a lot of improvement. But again, assurance of quality processes is an ongoing journey. Where processes change, there is the adoption, and not everybody is always at the same path and at the same rhythm with that. I dare to say cultural imperialism, a bit of especially Western schools, Western institutions, sometimes driven by requirements and regulations, sometimes driven by the Route 261 syndrome. So, the not invented here syndrome. We invented this works, so we would like our partners to use and adopt the same approach. So that works at the beginning, that works fine, but then partnerships is all about like the people taking the lead in different ways. It is about a marriage, it is like it takes two to tango, but imposing a particular aspect or a particular framework is great at the beginning, gives a bit of momentum, but then at different times, different institutions need to take the lead. And then finally, overall, the partner strategic alignment. Double degree programs, joint programs have always been a bit of a boutique programs, a bit of a special programs. And although they are very important into the portfolio of programs for an institution, they require a lot of energy, they require a lot of attention, and the individual strategy of an institution might change over time. So, we would like to obviously monitor that constantly. So these are some of the reasons. No, the list is not exclusive, but there are some. These are some of the reasons why joint programs. They haven't lived to the hype that a decade ago we were hoping for. There are some very good cases, and the very good cases actually, like a bit, I hope, the EDHEC UCLA Nanyang case actually thrived on the basis of some big changes in higher education. So this is why we would like to use this as a case today, because some of these changes are investing everybody at the moment, and especially during and after the pandemic, some of the challenges that we've been facing, and some of the solutions we found are here to stay. So those changes meant that for us, we were able to, to anticipate a bit of the trend and actually to put in place some things that in fact worked. So new things are emerging. Schools are going towards like positive impact. The social responsibility of institutions is becoming more and more relevant for schools. There is no longer necessary, is no longer thought for academics to live in the ivory tower, but everything is measured in terms of impact, both from research, from teaching, from students' activity. So BGA puts this as a very important criterion in their approach, in their strategies, and that is actually extremely relevant because more and more over the next few years we're going to see the relevance of that and the emergence of alternative knowledge repositories. Nowadays with the world of internet, people can access knowledge from YouTube to to Coursera, to different solutions. But what they cannot access is how to make a positive impact from that knowledge into real life. Another aspect is responsible management. And again, BGA puts that as a critical aspect for the accreditation, as a critical aspect for the mentoring program. And it's one of the things that is going to stay relevant for business schools and universities for the next few years. So more and more, yes, we can know how to manage. We can learn how to manage by looking on the field, by accessing knowledge. But more and more, our courses, our programs are designed to inspire students to manage responsibly, to see at all the different aspects of management, not just how to be effective, not just triple bottom line, but to see on how to embed things such as sustainability, finance, into our own, into the everydayness of management. And lifelong learning. The European Union put this at the center of its agenda for a few years now. BGA again puts this as a key, as a critical aspect. Lifelong learning is treated very differently across different states and different continents. Both Heinrich and Denis mentioned the extension system at Harvard and at UCLA, two great examples of how lifelong learning, adult learning, if we want to say, or ability to improve constantly, are managed in the United States. But that happens in a variety of ways in Europe. Still far away from an homogeneous approach to lifelong learning, and very differently again in Asia. So lifelong learning is there to stay. Students learn, and but will continue to learn even beyond their programs. And two aspects that are coming up, and the pandemic really highlighted it, is the diversification of how I like to call it, how we call it at EDHEC, is hybridization. So the opportunity for students more and more to think about outside of the box, to move beyond the simple course that they have been taking, the simple program that they've been taking, to try to expand it into areas that are not necessarily linked to it. In the United States, traditionally, students had the opportunity to, business students, we're talking about, for example, had the ability to take classes in other areas. In Europe, this is something new. It's something in Asia as well, something new. It's something where we are here to learn, and it is important as well to, it will be important again for the future. More and more, especially during the pandemic, people realize that they can access different things. All of us learned a new skill while we were locked in our apartments. I picked up guitar. It's like I'm an amazing guitar player. And how I can actually use now music into my teaching is something that is in my agenda for next academic year. It has all come down to things that I will never have done before, but is part of the future. And then is the evolution of learning methods. Perhaps time to go beyond the classroom. Wrote a paper a few years ago about how we work with students outside of the classroom. Many of you have had one time where you took the students and walked to a park, walked to an auditorium outside, and actually moved to experience a different approach to learning. The pandemic highlighted online learning, highlighted asynchronous teaching, synchronous teaching, the importance of it, but also highlighted how people now access podcasts, access things in the media in very, very different ways. So we need to consider more and more that our audiences are very diverse in terms of how they approach learning and on how they engage with contents. So how we actually looked at this wave just slightly before, and we were able to design a program that is a 4 years program, so slightly different from the 3 years normally, but is a 1 degree program, so promoted by EDHEC Business School, which that offers 2 certificates, one with International Trade and Commerce at UCLA Extension, and one in International Management at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. 3 continents, therefore, plus 14 months internships. Students have 3 periods where they can experience work-based learning, working in a company with a mentor from the school and a mentor from the company, developing projects inside there to apply whatever they've been studying in class into the work, into a work experience. And normally for the last few years, we always had 80 students per year. So this is actually quite different from the boutique small programs, small joint programs that we're always been talking about. We were promised the big numbers, we're promised the income few years ago. We're talking the stability of these programs, going not in peaks and troughs, and we've been able to sustain that. So students come in to spend the first year at the EDHEC Business School in Nice, where they engage with the traditional private French way of working, so very much learning by doing. We are an entrepreneurial school founded by entrepreneurs, so there is a lot of attention into doing things as long as studying. But classes remain a bit, still taught in a bit traditional method, with professor presenting knowledge and then students doing things. And then they move to UCLA Extension for the second year, when they engage into a modular International Trade and Commerce certificate. So this is a standalone higher education certificate, developed initially by UCLA Extension for its portfolio of programs, but custom made for EDHEC. So that allowed the customization, as we're going to see in a second, allowed the program to be successful, because that ability to customize some of the contents, to customize some of the approaches, to customize some of the teaching to students that are young. They arrive at UCLA Extension at 19 years old, slightly different from the traditional adult learner, and they have an initial period of adjustment, which this allows things to work very well. And then students do a 5 months internship and to move eventually to Singapore, where a certificate they engage in a certificate called International Management, but we should perhaps call it Future Management. At Singapore is a large university focusing on innovation with a lot of labs, engineering, and so on. So there we actually look at the future of management and at the future of technology, and students look at the future of finance. So they have the ability to study in class, to work with professors who normally been working with MBA students, but they tailored, of course, a certificate for undergraduate students. So in a very dialogical way, using a lot of the experiences from the different labs and the different innovations at NTU, Nanyang Technological University, to present students different ways, how the future will look like, an ability to present something new to them. So in a way, we looked at offering students 3 completely different educational systems. In France, with professor teaching, then you applying things, flipped education in the United States, and dialogical teaching in Nanyang. Three different cultural experiences. Professors who are used to undergraduate students at EDHEC, professors who are used to adult learners at UCLA Extension, professors who are used to MBA students at Nanyang Technological University, and managing all of that to actually show and mix different ways of teaching to the students and allowing them to expose and to highlight different ways of learning. Three completely different students' experiences, three different campuses, three different relationships with teachers. Teacher-students relationship change in Asia, in Europe, or in the United States. And ethical approach and impact, although the same, three very different ways of looking at it. And how we are going to see that in a second, in the next slide. So very important, but very important. All three institutions focused on this very much, but they interpret it in very unique ways. So, one of the things we say is that the partnership is the most important thing in joint programs. So wedding the partnership is fundamental, it's crucial. And traditionally, the literature always told us the partners must be as strategically similar, fine, perfect, but also as similar culturally and as similar in size, as similar as possible in terms of approaches, as similar as possible. The similarity was the mantra. Should all partners be the same was our question. We decided not to. And so we have a private French business school at EDHEC. We do have a continuing education institution into UCLA Extension. And we do have a public autonomous research university in Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. So three very different approaches, but make a quite unique recipe. So why? Because we decided to focus, instead of focusing on the similarity of the institution, on the similarity of what we offer, on the similarity of what we things, we focused on the similarity of our mission and on the similarity of the values and beliefs that we wanted to work on, and allowed everyone, all the three partners, to be a leader over time in different areas of this. So all three partners have a strong interest in interdisciplinarity. NTU, EDHEC, and UCLA Extension, they do have at the core of the strategic plans. Hybridization is the future for us. And for UCLA Extension, this is actually the nature, they're naturally devoted to it. However, NTU can count on diversity for size. There are a lot of faculties, a lot of schools, a lot of departments. UCLA Extension can count on the flexibility of their modular. And EDHEC counts on strategic partners to achieve that. As a three, we're a bit like the three caravels from Columbus. Everybody always thinks that they were exactly the same, but they were not. One was nimble and fast, the Nina. The Pinta was slightly bigger and very good for waves, and the Santa Maria was a massive cargo ship, overlooking for the others. But each and every one was working at different times in different ways. So the pathway allows hybridization to take different forms. At the EDHEC, hybridization is mainly in the realm of business, finance, and economics. So we allow students to take electives, have different experiences within a business context. But then they move at, the NTU is always at the hybridization is an interface between business and technology. So students take classes in artificial intelligence and in Internet of Things, in blockchain, and so on. And at NTU, the interface is between business and personal discovery and experience. Students are mentored to actually try and test some new things that they might link to their passion and to develop entrepreneurial activities for the future. Value learning, all the three institutions think about learning as a very complex journey. And traditional approaches always look at learning as divided by age. We have undergraduate students, graduate students, Actually, it's always like age divided. But today's challenges make learning very complex, and perhaps it's a bit of time to go beyond as well the differences between ages. So our experiment has actually been quite successful because we've been offering students a bit of more challenge, working with professors of different levels, but giving them the ability to actually rethink and rechange their learning constantly. In the three processes, they look at three different experiences, three different ways of relating, three different ways of engaging, three different levels of engagement. I'm checking time, 3 minutes, and I'll be done. And independent learning is becoming widespread. It's becoming more and more. Open. So is quite important. It's quite fundamental. Each institution favors a particular aspect of learning. So students in this program can learn by doing, by reflexivity, by a dialogical approach. And in all the cases, they tend to learn independently. Finally, all the three institutions value a lot transforming the future. Continuous impact at the core of the BGA accreditation, at the core of the BGA message, has been for us quite crucial when we designed the program, because we decided to NTU invest in the future by transforming innovation, looking at how new innovation can transform the lives of individuals. UCLA invests into impacting the future of people, by transforming access, by transforming opportunities, by transforming daily routines into challenges that can offer a step up for students. And UCLA and EDHEC invest in transforming the future by impacting a generational thinking. Our future generation approach is all about changing the way and how we think business, how we think finance, and trying to impact how we develop, how we change the status quo of how we do things here. So things such as changing the way of teaching, changing the impact is part of that, and allows us to go beyond the discipline, to go beyond the books only, to go beyond the classroom and the engagement the students do have with the teacher, with the content. So what we learned from this strategic approach is that do not be afraid of the partners being different. Best salads come from different ingredients. Although when we were promised the Emerald City, in the end we were a bit of a cowardly lion, a tin man, and a scarecrow that we all decided to walk together. And each and every one of us took the front stage, and the text stage at different points. And it's okay, it's fine, because we do have all our individual competences. Make the program modular. So a big problem over time is that single universities need to change, single partners need to change things. So the more a joint program is structured and embedded into a form, the more every change will actually take time, especially if you work with public universities in all Europe. It takes time to implement changes. So that then becomes one of the things that allows, as we saw at the beginning, joint programs to not be successful. For us, we kept the recipe simple. 1 degree, 2 certificates. Certificates are kind of independent, but modularized and adapted to the program. So if UCLA Extension would like to change something into the future, into the certificate, will actually be quite simple for us to adapt it. We change things into the International Management Certificate this year. Fairly easy to do it with Nanyang Technological University. In all the partnerships I've done in the last 20 years, it was impossible to think about a change to be done within an academic year, within the matter of few months. and I manage international partnerships, across the world for years. Have each partner take the lead on one aspect. We all, for example, as I mentioned, we all look at impact, but we all have our specificities. So NTU takes the lead on technology, EDHEC takes the lead on finance, UCLA takes the lead on modularization and diversification of product contents. Think beyond fixed structures. As you notice, our calendar doesn't really work exactly in a traditional way. So students spend 1 year in EDHEC with a semester, then they move to second year UCLA, but they work in a quarter structure. Very easy for them to adapt. If we tell them at the beginning that we can move beyond fixed structures. But the last year in Singapore, in fact, straddles between two academic years, two European academic years. Why? Because otherwise we would have struggled to align all the deadlines and everything working with an Asian partner, and that will not have worked. But for us to go beyond the fixed structure of 1 year, 2 years, we're working in the same level, allowed us actually to create space and opportunities for work-based learning. So allowed us the opportunity to create spaces where students can go and work in companies during those dead times for 5 months, for 6 months. They can have an impact, and they can have hybridize because they can learn new things. This year, before students went for their 5 months internship, there's a 6 month part. So we actually had 1 month where students had done mini projects where they helped small businesses affected by the pandemic to move and develop their new online offer. So small businesses affected by the pandemic was a way for us to put students in link with those businesses and to have an impact very visible straight away with companies. And then, very important, have dedicated teams. We have a team from NTU, a team from UCLA Extension, a team from EDHEC working together on this, and we all feel as a part of a team, and it's perfect matrix structure here. But we work extremely well together. We have constant meetings, different channels of communication, changes and approaches and problems get flagged very quickly because we are very aligned. We're very aligned on our communication. So a few years ago, with some colleagues, Philip Palermo and Samuel Mercado, we published a small paper that I think we sent you, and then it was part of a book, Transnational Education. So where the partnership was our first step, and then we had like 4 other steps of this wheel. It was very coincidence that we had this acronym to work with us, where we actually have laid down some suggestions and some actions. I will actually let you have the presentations, and you will be able to go through the different practices themselves. It's very it moves very much from the strategy that we talked so far to the nitty-gritty operations. Things like disclose details of the cultural relationship between staff and student. Before students move on to UCLA, we tell them on what is to be expected from an American university, from students in American university. Before they move to NTU, they get a bit of that as well. So they understand that the level of communication, the level of accessing knowledge, the thinking of professors is completely different. Publish assessment schedules that highlight expectation and administrative burdens for both students and staff. That allows everybody to be on the same page, allows everybody to be clear. detail the structure of teaching and learning. So allow students to actually understand that it is not just a philosophical change the teaching, but it's also a practical aspect. You know, imagine the shock of a university or a European student used to be in class many hours during a week, and then all of a sudden moving to the US when you only have 12 hours of contact. And that is very difficult, very different if they don't understand this actually a philosophical change, a different approach into preparing things. And you know, quality assurance process, use fact sheets, include evaluation processes, present roadmaps to international accreditations if anyone is moving, draw and compare flow charts of quality assurance procedure for both partners. Establish completion requirements, make sure on map credits and equivalences throughout. Very easy if you're doing modular, as I said earlier on. Identify requirements at program level, at institutional level, and a national level. EDHEC, this program has just been recognized by the French state for the grade de licence. There is an extra element of recognition from the state. It's actually was quite important for us to work with our partners and to design these things together. And then finally, you know, share programs, calendars, management plan is quite important. Plan the balance between students' engagement and independent work. Determine the exact requirements of weeks in each program for students. Visually, that is something that helps everybody, the team and the students to work well. Those operational things, and I conclude here, are very important for one thing. Allow students to create a sense of identity to a program that otherwise they will not have, because they will either feel DEC students or they will feel NTU students or they will feel it, but all these practical things that we saw in these tables allow students to actually develop more and more an understanding that they are at the same time in 1 and in 3. And it allows them to be an EDHEC students, allow them to be a Bruin to feel as Bruin at UCLA Extension, allows them to feel as an NTU student, and allows them to feel at the same time part of 1 and part of 3. So I hope I didn't rush too much, but we can go back into the question and answers to some of the aspects you wanted to talk more about. So these are my contacts. Hook me up on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going even after this webinar. So thank you very much. And I pass the word to Denis, who can give a bit of more the perspective from UCLA extension of how we work together.
Thank you, Angelo. I think you did a very good job presenting like this program, but also how we work together. I took some note during your presentation, but you touched base on almost everything that I write down. So it shows that we're on the same page. One thing that I want to focus on is you mentioned the differences between the organization. So I feel that through this partnership, we really leverage our differences and our strength. And that's probably like the main key of the success of this collaboration. We are very different, but also we really work very well together. We have strong communication. And one thing that Angelo mentioned when he was looking at the challenges, it was often like when a promoter move on, then like the collaboration collapse. In this case, the collaboration is not, it's of course, Angelo and myself are probably the face of the collaboration, but there's a full team working on this project. So if myself or Angelo move on to a different position in our organization or institution, or if we move on to another university, I'm very confident that we will be able to, that this collaboration will continue. For an example, even the career service team from EDHEC and UCLA Extension are in touch. because EDHEC students are doing an internship in the US after their graduation. So they're getting some help while they're in France, and then we continue to support the students while they're in the US. I'm in touch with their marketing and recruitment team because sometimes that they have questions. Sometimes they ask me, can you help us with like a presentation? So it goes beyond just the management of this program.
And we had the case of one of the promoters from NTU moving to a different role while they're within the university, and someone else slotted in extremely easy, as I've never seen happening into a joint program, simply because exactly, we were creating this environment that goes a bit beyond the person has normally it is in joint programs.
Mm-hmm. And what I feel also what we have in common is that we're always looking for changes, how we can improve the programs. Since the first year, I think it was in 2017, every year we're doing like small changes. As Angelo mentioned, most of our students at UCLA Extension are adult learners. So it's very different for our instructor to teach adult learner versus undergraduate students. And we give them like feedback, and we work in collaboration with EDHEC to ensure that like it was a great learning experience for the students, and also to make sure that it's more aligned with their experience. So we remain unique and very different, but we try to work closely together to continue to improve the program. And also one thing that like Angelo didn't mention is that this program was probably like created in like a year or two. So it was very short. Sometimes I'm involved in other collaboration, and sometimes for like a 1 week or 1 month program, you'll have like longer conversation. But EDHEC Business School, being a private university, was able to pivot and move very fast. And I feel that probably because we're self-supported, the School of Continuing Education, we also have that ability to be a little bit more entrepreneurial. And that was key of the success because sometimes I have conversation with larger public university from France and other part of the world. And it's sometimes the challenge is their ability to make decision and to move forward. We understand that we have to adjust to their structure, but it's so pleasant when we meet a partner like EDHEC that is ready to move forward. And we were amazed, like I think the first cohort had over 60 students. That was unbelievable for us. So it has been like a real pleasure working with EDHEC. And I think even like this year with the pandemic, that brought us closer because we had to have like more meetings and make sure that we were able to continue to support the students. Like instead of coming to the US, the students remain in France, and we pivot and we offered all our courses online, which was a challenge because we also have like time differences. So I think so far it's a great experience. And if we look at just that UCLA extension, our approach is really to focus on customization. I think all our partners are different, and we try to really adapt and make sure that we find a common ground and we can work closely with them.
Okay, thank you. Eric, I think we can move to some questions, perhaps. So
Yeah.
we can open a bit the floor so we can.
There was the first question relates to quality assurance and the kind of ensuring quality when a student moves through the journey. And of course, you have a curriculum and you have a program in place, but then the reality, of course, that they move physically from one place to the other and including also the internships in between. How do you coordinate? How do you work together to make that seamless as possible, of course?
So few things. So as Denis mentioned, we do have regular meetings. First of all, that allows us to actually capture any glitch or that might happen onto that. And then we do have regular visits as well, campus visits, and I look forward to the days of traveling, going back again, so I can go back to visit the fantastic UCLA campus again. But you know, traveling, seeing the students, seeing the professors, seeing the instructors, talking to them allows the continuous exchange between the three institutions. This is why when I was saying it is important to have a dedicated team to manage it. The program will not work without a dedicated team. You know, these programs, you want the numbers, you want the sustainability of it. They do not work if you just make an agreement on paper. The two international deans shake hands, sign a memorandum of understanding, and then nothing else happens. You know, so there is a resource commitment that is important to that. Traveling, you know, we spend a lot on Zoom this year, and on the team. So those aspects are very important for quality assurance. And knowing each other's quality assurance, you know, we all know each other's requirements for our accreditation. You know, EDHEC is a triple accredited schools, all triple accredited schools. All schools know the different regional accreditations that we need to stay on. It is important to have that communication. Why we need to change some things because the Ministry of Education in France forces us, or because the Ministry of Education in Singapore requires something. You know, how to explain that to a partner. And that is fundamental only with a team.
And we're also trying to be very proactive. So Angelo, like when he started, like review all the syllabus of the courses, make sure that it was aligned with the courses that they're offering at EDHEC and at Nanyang University. And we're getting also a lot of feedback. So often Angelo will be the point of contact with the students, and we will work with the instructor. So we're able to get like feedback from both sides. So I feel that like that has been very helpful as well.
Yeah. I was curious about personally about the you have a 1 degree, 2 certificate structure, and I want to commend you for that, because that creates a lot of clarity between partners. What is the role and responsibilities? Could you talk a little bit about how the design came about? How did you design on this kind of a structure? What was the underlying discussion there?
So one of the key issues for joint programs is traditionally recruitment. Okay, so who does the recruitment, why, and how? And because numbers tend to be small, traditionally on joint programs, after the first phase or the first year, the second year, it's difficult for both partners to commit on that. So our structure, remember, we all do one thing, okay? So EDHEC moves very much takes the lead on the recruitment. So we take the lead on the recruitment, we present, we promote, we recruit students from 45 different nationalities, all over, you know, 80 students coming from all over the world. We invest a lot into recruitment, we push it, but we ask for our collaboration, you know, from Denis, as he mentioned, he helps us for visits in North America. You know, Puneet, who is our Singapore alter ego, helps us with recruitment fairs in Asia. But we take the lead on the recruitment. But then when it comes, for example, to you know, graduation at the end, the lead is taken by Nanyang, by the NTU. You know, they organize something. Even at the end of the second year, we have a certificate graduation. UCLA takes the lead on that. So this is where I say that each partner takes the lead on a diverse aspect. UCLA takes the lead on helping students for the OPT, you know, the visa required for international students to have an internship in the US. And then it's fundamental because they have the local knowledge, because they have the local contacts, they do understand the market, they do understand how to present that. So they take the lead on that particular aspect. And this is why we left it modular rather than going immediately for like a triple dual degree and so on, because the modularity allows us to change quickly. And in today, one of the things that doesn't allow joint programs to work is that once they're designed, it takes, as Denis said, 4 or 5 years to change it. And in 4 or 5 years, education is gone. Something that I always like to say, and I finish there, is that we nowadays teach students and prepare students for jobs and careers that do not exist yet. You know, so our challenge is to teach, 20 years ago when we went to university, it was easy. We were studying for something that after 3 years, 4 years, we knew where it was coming. Nowadays, if I'm training somebody in finance, I have no idea what finance will look like in 3 years' time, with blockchain and open ledgers and everything else. So if I train somebody in marketing, I wouldn't know what they would look like with artificial intelligence and so on in 3 years' time. So it is extremely important more and more to be able to be modular on that and faster and nimble. As the 3 caravels for Columbus, we have the fast one, the nimble one, and the mothership who brings the cargo.
And just to add a little bit, I think Angelo explained it very well. And what I would add is that EDHEC is also like the institution that is granting the degree. So of course they have like the leadership of like the degree. We all own our small module. We work in collaboration, of course, but overall like EDHEC is like the main institution. So we work very closely with them and we adjust like the curriculum. Our academic director has meeting with Angelo and his colleagues to make sure that like we make changes and we make sure that there's no overlap between what they're doing during their first year at EDHEC and what they're doing during the second year at UCLA Extension. So, but over the overall leadership is from EDHEC, and Angelo and his colleagues are doing an amazing job.
Excellent. There are a couple of questions in the chat from the audience. So let me take the first one here is about how does the pan-epidemic affect the joint programs given that there is no travel? So what has kind of given in and what kind of innovation has emerged from the past year and a half?
Means that I slept very little over the last year and a half. Because jokes aside, it was a very demanding year and a half. Because when you travel, you go for a week at UCLA, you go for a week at Los Angeles, you dedicate the week to UCLA, you dedicate things to that, we look at things. Then we move a week to Singapore, we meet again with even in the East. And so travel is important because it allows us to be much more effective in real time. The pandemic, the main challenge was to move everything online, which implied much more frequent communication in a way. Instead of talking once every 2 weeks, we would normally talk, we would like once a week plus WhatsApps and Zooms and messages. And I talked more to Denis over my last year than to my mother. So, but that, obviously has a toll. Because it becomes tiring for teams to be, communication is important, but then you do not want to overdo it and to distract the teams for other activities. So yeah, I think that the pandemic caused a bit of that challenge, in terms of that, but brought us closer as a mega team global.
Mm-hmm. And it was very challenging because when the pandemic started, we had like a cohort of students from EDHEC that were like about 2 weeks before completing their certificate. So we needed to have like conversation with Angelo and his team to decide, okay, what are we doing with the students? Like, are we asking them to finish their courses remotely from Los Angeles? Should we encourage them to return to France as early as possible? So we really need to be to have strong communication to make those type of decision. And sometimes we loop other people like the French embassy or other people that can help us to make decision. And then for this year cohort, it was we were expecting that the students would be able to come to Los Angeles. So it was like a constant adapting to the new guideline, the new requirement, postponing. So a lot of communication on both sides and also managing students' expectation. EDHEC could have decided to say oh, we're doing that fully online this year. We'll provide the courses to the students, but they decided to trust us with the online courses. So we were very pleased with that. So we were able to offer like the same curriculum as usual, but like we moved to remote instruction instead of in classroom. Of course, like the student didn't have like the same cultural experience, but we're trying to find like creative way to give them this opportunity.
And just to add on that, we then had to develop other activities, you know, like the small consultancy projects with companies that they could do remotely, some social activities as well, because it's, you know, everybody knows the drill this year. You know, we takes out the like campus life, even more when students then were just, you know, they were mostly from different countries, but were challenged with remote instruction by time zones. And you know, finding other activities to keep them engaged, you know, was only possible because we all work together a bit.
And building on that question from the audience, I'm wondering, of course, innovation always comes with some pain. And we, of course, have been going through some pain because we've been forced to change here in order to cope. I'm wondering, have you kind of recognized some true innovation that you actually don't want to walk away from? You want to actually keep it as a core of the program. For example, Angela just mentioned the small business challenges online, and it sounds like you have been innovating, improving the program in order to cope with. Is there something that you would actually like to keep moving forward because there were some grand new opportunities emerging?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, for us, it's the normality, so it's difficult to see reflexively on that. But indeed, you know, for us to keep a conversation with external actors was always important. So even during the pandemic, EDHEC students arrived to help associations like NGOs all over the world. You know, we planted 1,000 trees in Haiti during the pandemic. We didn't do it physically; they didn't do it physically, but they coordinated those elements. Working with a local NGO in Haiti and many other things. You know, they raised. We had one of the students died unfortunately suddenly last year, so it was a very tragic event, a pandemic, and so on. But this year, the students raised 25,000 euros to actually build on his honor a school in Benin, in Africa, West Africa, because this was one of his dreams. You know, so the main innovation is that we have constantly new ways of making an impact, looking at new ways of looking at new technologies, looking at social impact or environmental impact. So is always finding new ways to have that impact.
Wow, what an example! And yeah, I can see the impact of the crowd, and of course in the honor of memorizing their colleague. I'm looking on the chat here, and the next question is relating to regions that you would recommend US schools to reach out to for building joint programs. Are there any regions in particular, specific countries where you think the appetite for this would be particularly large and is perhaps not served for the moment?
Denis, do you want to?
That's a great question. If I had that answer, I would probably be even more successful in my position. I would say the region is important. I would say there's the ability to pay, because at UCLA Extension, international incoming students are fee-paying students. So that's one point that I always keep in mind. But you have to look like beyond the region. I feel it's also like the type of institution, as I mentioned earlier, EDHEC being private, a private business school, was much more easier for us to work with them. And knowing that, based on that experience, that's also something that I keep in mind. Sometimes people feel that like UCLA Extension will be looking mostly for big public research university for partnership, but not necessarily. So I would look also like not only at the region, also at the institution. And Angelo mentioned in the challenge when he started his presentation, requirement and regulation. There are some countries that like you need to provide like the bulk of the curriculum in the home country to be able to issue a degree. So that's something that like when you start speaking with like just one university, you quickly learn about this. And then you can say, okay, this won't work with that university or that region. That doesn't mean that you cannot have international partnership with that country or that area. It's just that you might have to do like something that it's more optional, that it's not necessarily part of the degree that can be like offered in summer or something else. So those would be like my feedback.
Yeah. And there are in general, you know, like Southeast Asia remains a particular good hub to have it, A, because of the quality of students, the approach, but also because, as Denis was mentioning, there is more and more an approach of being for school and universities to be entrepreneurial. You know, from in the West, we thought we were a bit myopic. We didn't see the top schools in Taiwan, for example, you know, it's starting to be much more entrepreneurial. We didn't see, you know, schools in Vietnam with amazing students, with great content, understanding a bit of the change. And you know, even if we look at People's Republic of China, Vietnam, you know, they are looking at different forms of capitalism. They're looking at different forms of engaging with the internet. They're different, you know, ethically neutral. So they're looking at new innovations in things that we are in the West have been taken for granted. You know, capitalism is this, works in this particular way. We don't see it in other ways. And perhaps there is learning, you know, perhaps there is learning to look in all of it. And there are great competences there is great competences in that region. Yeah, indeed.
Next question in the chat. This is a
Can I
great
add one more thing, Henry?
Please go ahead. Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah, no worries. Of course, Angelo mentioned like innovation. I would say also how much they're eager to move forward with that type of program, because I think everyone will entertain that type of conversation, but you really need to find the people that are excited and want to move forward with it. And in our case, it's also like English proficiency is also like, it's also something that we have to keep in mind. EDHEC is offering like their first year in English. So that was guaranteeing us that like the students will be successful in their class with us at UCLA Extension. Sometimes that might be a challenge to recruit like a larger cohort depending on the region.
Excellent. So there is the next question is the one I love the most, is coming from the chat. What was the most difficult aspect in building a joint program between your two schools? And then the follow-up question, what disagreements did you have? And of course, we've been listening here for a fantastic marriage and a really impactful and impressive program. But I'm sure, as someone in the audience as well, that not everything is always easy, and it's going to be interesting to lift a little bit the lid and look behind as well.
Come on, Denis and I are a very good sitcom partnership. You know, it's like I'm the Italian who like comes up with all these strange ideas every 5 minutes, and he's the more rational person who brings me back, reins me back in. So it's a good marriage because I have all these wacky ideas and he brings me back to sanity. so it's quite good. But in terms of challenges, surely, as Denis mentioned, or requirements from you know, they go beyond us. As a schools, we can decide to do all changes, all innovation, and so on. But the moment where you do have a government, a state that tells you, you must have this, you know, you have to work within a framework, you know, so you must work within a framework to do it. So we've been quite apt in innovation in that. So it's you know, for example, our final project or final dissertation see students working on being able to choose between a personal research, traditional research thesis, or an applied thesis with a company, an applied research project with a company. But that did not come without like a long challenges and a long discussions with the minister, the Singapore Minister of Education, the French Minister of Education, to make sure that what we were proposing was in fact in line with something that they will recognize and they will accept. So the framework within you have to move is always the major thing to keep in touch. We can be at sea like 3 fantastic caravels, but we need to check those winds and where they're coming from. Yeah. Main disagreements, no major disagreements. We had. I think perhaps, and again, at the beginning is always about learning each other's style. So learning how we do things here is different from what you do things there, and perhaps some of the UCLA Extension is used to adult learners. Even the way you can talk to an adult learner is very different from the way you will talk to a 19 years old. So sometimes at the beginning a message might have been misunderstood, but that actually was very quickly because we were all working in partnerships. So all messages are reinforced, are checked between us. So there is the continuous improvement all the time. We're very Japanese in that. There is a lot of kaizen, a lot of continuous improvement, little by little on that.
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I don't think we had like major disagreement like since we started this collaboration. The biggest challenge that we met is like, as Angelo alluded earlier, one of the EDHEC students passed away while he was in the US studying at UCLA Extension. But I think, of course, it was a traumatic experience for like both institutions, but I think that also like brought us like even closer, like how you manage like crisis like this, trying to support the parents, the other students. So that was very unfortunate and very challenging. Otherwise, I would say expectations. And I think that's something that we were able to adapt or adjust like after the first cohort, because the first cohort, they have not been on campus. There's students have expectation, they have experience studying like, as Angelo mentioned earlier, probably around like 20 or 30 hours in the classroom at EDHEC, and then they come to UCLA Extension, and there's a lot of work and preparation that happen outside of the classroom, but probably around like 12, 15 hours in the classroom. So that was very different. And also our students at UCLA Extension usually don't want to take advantage of the students group and the different activities that happen on campus, because often they work full-time, they had family responsibility. So for EDHEC, it was like how we can help and open some doors for the students to take like full advantage of like the UCLA experience. So I would say those are probably the main challenge that we had, but moving like to create that partnership, I cannot think about like something major or like a disagreement that we had. I think everyone was in good faith and was doing his best to make sure that this partnership is successful. And that's probably why Angelo and myself are here together today to speak about it, instead of saying about lesson learned and why you should not work with other universities.
And just to mention, I mean, it's our Singapore partner works extremely well with us, and it's just for a matter of time zones and other engagements that we decided to be only Denis and I. But there's always a three-way conversation. It's quite we all are in good alignment. And that is fundamental, but that can't. And the thing is that we are in good alignment because the process is in good alignment. No, because I've been in other partnerships where there was a personal implication first, and that worked, yeah, that worked, but it was not working for the students, it was working for us. Well, instead, when we decided years ago with my colleagues, when I was working in Nottingham, we decided to focus on the processes rather than focusing on the people designing it. That was the moment where we actually started designing things that were really, really working, like in this situation.
Excellent. Let's take a next question from the chat. This one is a little bit longer one. Thanks a lot for an insightful presentation. We understand the value of joint international programs, but to set up one must be highly resource intensive. This is especially hard for a small school. How would you recommend this to be done effectively without interrupting normal operations in that school? And I think that goes back to your original model and the potential kind of challenges that schools are facing. How can a small school with not so kind of resource-rich basis be successful in this area as well?
Modularity, as you said, is a key. Modularity is a key aspect. You know, so find rather than designing something ex novo, rather than designing something completely from scratch, it is perhaps important to find modular that already exist and they can be tailored to this. Then they can be adapted and changed. You know, is through so that there is a first element. The investment is important. You know, in terms of resources, in terms of mental attention from the teams, the investment is significant. Work, our work time hours, staff hours are relevant, but you know, our numbers are steady, our numbers are healthy. You know, we're one of the most demanded programs in Europe for applications. So then that initial investment paid off and paid off strongly. But this is why I was saying that it's important for the institution to actually commit to that and to understand how the program will fit within a message. You know, a school like EDHEC is worldwide renowned, with traditionally an attention to our master offer. You know, is our BBA program, though being quite successful and being top ranked in France for a few years. All BBAs in France is a new expression, is a new way of coming, is a new development. So for the school, it was very important to actually have a stamp of excellence on the BBA at the BBA level, which you know it strategically works very well.
I agree. I think you have to look at from a long time commitment perspective. If you're looking for short-term gain, it may not be the best approach. But if you understand that the time and the effort that you put upfront to plan this program will pay for the following years, that's probably the best approach. And as Angelo mentioned, at UCLA Extension, we didn't create any courses. What we did is that we look at one of our existing certificate, in this case, it was International Trade and Commerce, and we customize it based on like the students and also the other courses that they already completed before they come to UCLA Extension. But the courses that we waive or substitutes were also courses that were already offered at UCLA Extension. Also, this program, one thing that we didn't mention, when the students are coming to UCLA, the students are having some courses that are offered as a private cohort. And there's also courses that they're joining our open enrollment courses. So I feel that's also a way to like manage like how much work and how much time you put. So that's and for the students, there's a benefit because they really feel like as a very strong cohort, they have very strong relationship, but they're also able to interact with other international students and American students. But having this was a way for us also to not create like too much additional work, but at the same time meeting the expectation from our partners.
Yeah, and it sounds like they get the true experience of UCLA rather than getting a very distinct experience as a traveling cohort. So That
Correct.
integration makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So next question is about, do admission requirements become more lax to allow for more students with various backgrounds, or are they higher because of the international competition? This goes back to what Angela was saying. Very interesting, you mentioned that you have a very strong interest in the program. And then Dennis, also you mentioned something which I thought was very interesting. You said that you kind of trust EDHEC as a partner, that they have kind of an English-speaking first year, and you know that when they come to you, they are prepared for the international experience. But it's that calibration probably in the beginning, which is interesting to discuss about.
It is actually the opposite. So the more we go forward, the more stringent our admission requirements become. Yeah. Because I mean, they were already stringent from the beginning. I mean, the program is entirely taught in English. And at the beginning, we require a very high level of English to enter the program. Higher than perhaps EDHEC, UCLA Extension, or Singapore would normally ask to an international student, to be fair. So already at that level shows the level of commitment to quality. You know, it's like, yes, individually these parts can ask you for this, but we would like to raise the bar. And then, you know, we do have quite a strict admission process. Each student is interviewed by one member of the faculty, is interviewed by admission teams. Why? Because it's important. We are asking students to commit to 4 years, to a life made of 4 years living in 3 different continents, perhaps 4, you know, 5 with their internships. We have students going to Buenos Aires for their internship, and then in Australia. So, you know, you require students to be extremely committed. Again, like the Columbus and the Caravels, who is coming with us is actually coming with us to a journey that will lead somewhere, but we do not know how tough and hard it will be. So this is why we really want students who have high quality, high academic standards, and we recruit some of the students with the highest, you know, with the highest high school grade, and with you know, with motivation. So we interview them, we actually check with them whether they are ready for such a journey.
And EDHEC is doing, as Angelo mentioned, like they have very high requirement for admission. So for us, like usually our courses at UCLA Extension, being a school of continuing education, it's open enrollment. So there are very few requirements, and one of the main one is English proficiency. And actually EDHEC is requiring a higher TOEFL or IELTS score than we required for our usual certificate programs. And just being able to, I attend some recruitment fair on behalf of UCLA, and I'll see it that my colleagues from EDHEC that are there. So we really see like they're very professional in their recruitment and very, very selective.
Very impressive. One question I have is when you think about what you have experienced in the last years, and I like also the fact that Angelo is researching his trade, so you are also an expert in terms of these programs and know what others are doing. What would be kind of an advice you would give to other schools if they want to explore something like this? What do you think would be kind of the final point based on your experience that you would like to make?
Go beyond, as I mentioned in the presentation, is go beyond the discipline, go beyond the classroom. So go beyond the discipline means a lot of the joint programs tend to be in the same area, you know, business school to business school, or, you know, maybe a major with a minor, business with marketing. More and more education will be interdisciplinarity. You know, education is based there. We're exposed to so much knowledge nowadays, to so much access to knowledge, and our careers will change over the years. You know, Eric, no, you and I, you know, you will retire as professors and in 60 years times. But, you know, nowadays, everybody has the chance to try different things, and everybody will try, and our students will have 11, 12 careers over the course of their lives. But it's quite important to offer that interdisciplinarity, because it keeps strangely keeps the focus. You know, the ability to see other things and the ability to compare and contrast other things will keep the focus. So as a piece of advice I can give is, do not just consider, you know, a school in your, so if you're listening from a business school, consider as well a school of journalism, a school of engineering. If you're seeing us from a school of engineering, we're here, so come and talk to us. But instead, that is a key advice I would like to suggest.
Excellent.
A little bit similar, I would say, like, be creative. Don't necessarily look at this program or other existing program and try to duplicate those. Like, be creative. Also keep in mind, like, how you're adding value for the students. I think EDHEC model, having like the students studying in France, in the US, and in Singapore, that was very appealing for me when I first heard about it. So I can see that it must be for the students, and also like keep the focus on the learning experience for the students, but like be very creative, like explore different ways, different terms, and don't look only at like what currently exists, but what you could do.
Fantastic. And just to wrap up, as a faculty member teaching in an international setting, I have to say it's immensely rewarding to be engaged with students from all over the world. And it's an improvised learning journey because everyone brings something to the table. And I can just imagine in the program that you offer, how students are coming together from different backgrounds. And I sometimes jokingly say that even without faculty, they will learn a lot. And then with faculty, they learn even more. So it's that kind of combination. And that's what I really wake up for every morning. And the last thing I think about in the evening, how fortunate I am to work in a similar type of environment that you offer. With that, gentlemen, I would like to commend you for a fantastic afternoon here. The presentation was both very practical, insightful, and of course also gave us the broader perspective, and then very specifically your experiences. And I also appreciate the fact that you were very transparent in explaining what has been the strong sides and also what are the areas where you've been balancing out. And it seemed like not too many of those, which is great. And I think that's also what we see from a student perspective and of course from an outside-in perspective. A really impressive program. With that, I would like to give you an applause and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.